When a person truly understands their worth, they stop moving at the speed of insecurity. They no longer feel compelled to rush, to impress, or to prove themselves to anyone. Self-worth becomes the anchor that keeps them steady in moments where others may feel pressured to act quickly or chase acceptance. It creates a calm sense of certainty, a grounded awareness that what is meant for them will not require frantic pursuit or self-abandonment. This confidence does not happen by accident. It grows from reflection, experience, and the willingness to acknowledge personal value without apology. When you know your worth, you stop being influenced by external timelines. Society may push the idea that success must happen fast, that relationships must develop instantly, that opportunities must be seized immediately. But someone with deep self-worth does not measure progress by speed. They measure it by alignment, meaning, and fit. They understand that rushing rarely leads to the right outcome. It often leads to compromise, exhaustion, and misalignment. So they choose a different approach, intention over haste. Rushing is often a sign of doubt. Doubt that there will be another opportunity. Doubt that they are enough. Doubt that waiting will work in their favor. This doubt drives people to accept less than they deserve, to force situations that are not right, or to stay in environments where their value is overlooked. But when a person recognizes their own value, doubt loses its grip. They learn to trust that what is aligned with their identity and purpose will arrive at the right time. Confidence in your worth also influences the quality of decisions you make. When someone feels unsure of themselves, they often make decisions quickly as a way to relieve discomfort. But these decisions are reactive, not thoughtful. A person who understands their value gives themselves the space to think, evaluate, and choose wisely. They know that saying yes to something that does not fit means saying no to something that could have. So they choose with patience, clarity, and discernment. This kind of confidence also shows up in how someone handles relationships. When you know your worth, you do not chase affection, attention, or validation. You do not try to earn love by overgiving, oversharing, or overextending yourself. Instead, you allow relationships to develop naturally. You allow people to meet you where you are, rather than lowering yourself to meet them. Mutual respect becomes the foundation, not effort-based approval. Understanding your worth also creates emotional stability. When your identity is not tied to someone else's approval, you are less affected by rejection, criticism, or misunderstanding. You do not fall apart when someone doesn't choose you, because your value was never dependent on being chosen. You begin to see rejection as redirection, not a reflection of your inadequacy. This allows you to move through life with dignity, even during moments of disappointment. Knowing your worth influences how you handle opportunities as well. Instead of jumping at every possibility, you evaluate whether each opportunity contributes to your growth, peace, and purpose. You become selective, not because you are picky or unrealistic, but because you respect your time and energy. This level of discernment prevents burnout and ensures that your resources are spent where they matter. This mindset also fosters patience. Patience is not passive waiting, it is active trust. It is the awareness that meaningful outcomes take time to form. When you understand your value, patience becomes easier because you are no longer afraid that the things meant for you will pass you by. You trust that your consistency, clarity, and alignment will lead you to what is right. Self-worth also influences how you show up in everyday situations. Your posture changes, your tone changes, your expectations change. You carry yourself with quiet assurance rather than loud performance. You do not need to announce your value because your actions already express it. You begin to walk into every space as someone who belongs, rather than someone seeking permission to be there. Ultimately, knowing your worth allows you to live with intention. Every choice, every step, and every interaction is guided by a clear internal understanding that you deserve environments, relationships, and opportunities that reflect who you are, not who you are afraid you might need to become. This inner certainty becomes the foundation for a life built with purpose rather than pressure. Choosing discernment over urgency is a shift from reacting to life to actively directing it. Urgency can make everything feel like now is the only time to act, as if delaying or reflecting is somehow a failure. But discernment recognizes that not every moment is the right moment, and not every option is the right option. It allows space to evaluate whether something aligns with our values, identity, and long-term vision, instead of rushing into situations just because they are available. Discernment gives us the clarity to ask whether they are right for us. Urgency often comes from fear that opportunities are limited, fear that someone else will take what could have been ours, fear that waiting means losing. When fear is driving the pace, decisions are rarely thoughtful. Choices become driven by anxiety instead of intention. Discernment, however, comes from confidence that what is aligned cannot be lost, confidence that saying no does not close doors, it opens better ones. Confidence that life does not reward haste, it rewards readiness. When someone moves with discernment, they are not impressed by quantity. They are focused on quality, whether it is relationships, goals, career steps, or personal commitments. They do not collect experiences for the sake of saying they have them. They choose fewer, but they choose deeply. This creates depth of experience rather than clutter. It results in a life that feels solid, meaningful, and connected, rather than chaotic and full of unfinished or unfulfilling pursuits. Urgency encourages comparison. It shifts attention outward to what others are doing, achieving, or receiving. It pushes people to measure themselves by external timelines and societal standards. Discernment brings focus back inward. It asks what feels aligned, what feels authentic, what feels sustainable. It shifts the measure of success from how fast something happens to how true it is to who you are and where you are going. Discernment requires listening to yourself, to your intuition, and to the subtle signals in your environment. It requires the patience to observe before acting. The pause is not hesitation, it is wisdom. It is the moment where clarity forms. In those pauses, you learn to differentiate between what is exciting but draining and what is steady and nourishing. You learn to distinguish between attraction and alignment. That skill changes everything. Urgency pressures you to respond immediately. To reply fast, decide fast, move fast, but fast decisions often come with consequences that slow you down later. Discernment recognizes that time spent thinking is not wasted time. It is preparation, it is protection. It safeguards your emotional, mental, and energetic resources so that when you commit to something, you commit fully and with conviction. Some environments reward urgency and treat discernment like hesitation, but discernment is not hesitation. It is mastery over your choices. It is the ability to remain grounded when others are influenced by momentum. It allows you to hold your standard even when others do not understand. It teaches you that alignment is more valuable than approval, and that longevity is more important than speed. Discernment also requires self-trust. You cannot choose well if you do not trust your own judgment. Developing this trust means learning to hear your intuition over noise, recognizing patterns in your experiences, and paying attention to how situations make you feel, not just how they appear. Self-trust turns decision-making from overwhelming to intentional. You stop seeking reassurance because you learn to reassure yourself. Living with discernment changes how you move through opportunities. You stop asking whether something is available and start asking whether it is aligned. You evaluate based on your values rather than your fears. You allow things to unfold instead of forcing outcomes. This transforms not only what you choose, but how you experience what you choose. Every decision feels clearer, lighter, and more grounded. Discernment over urgency shifts your life from reaction to authorship. It allows you to shape your environment instead of being shaped by it. It turns timing into a tool instead of a threat. It creates a life that feels consistent with who you are becoming, rather than one built on pressure and external expectation. Presence is one of the most valuable forms of currency a person has, even though it cannot be seen or measured in a traditional way. It is the focus, attention, and emotional awareness that you bring into a moment. When someone has presence, other people feel it without needing explanation. Presence communicates confidence, self-assurance, and intention. It is the ability to be fully here rather than scattered mentally across past worries or future concerns. When your presence is strong, your influence strengthens naturally, without you needing to force or demand attention. Your time, energy, and attention are limited resources. Not everything and not everyone deserves them. When you understand your value, you begin to allocate these resources more mindfully. You stop giving extended access to people who drain you. You stop placing your energy into environments that do not nourish you. Instead, you choose where and with whom you are fully present. This makes your presence feel like a gift, something meaningful rather than something automatic. Presence also changes how you interact with others. When you are fully present, you listen more deeply. You observe subtle details you may have missed before: the tone behind someone's words, the tension in a room, the emotion underneath a conversation. This level of awareness strengthens connection and allows you to show up with empathy and clarity. It makes relationships richer, communication cleaner, and understanding easier. When someone lacks presence, their attention is easily scattered. They speak but do not truly connect. They listen but do not absorb. Their mind jumps from thought to thought, always moving but rarely settling. This scattered energy makes them feel unstable, uncertain, and disconnected from what is happening around them. Presence is the opposite. It grounds, it centers. It creates emotional stillness even in the midst of external noise. Presence is also deeply tied to self-respect. When you enter a space with presence, you are not seeking permission to belong. You are asserting that you belong through the certainty of your being. You are not performing to impress others. You are not shrinking to avoid discomfort. You are simply standing in yourself, fully and without apology. This is a powerful way of existing because it does not rely on external approval. The more present you are, the more intentional your actions become. You are not just reacting to circumstances. You are choosing how to move, how to speak, and how to respond. You make decisions from awareness rather than impulse. This reduces regret, confusion, and emotional chaos. Your life becomes more aligned because you are no longer moving on autopilot. Presence also influences how others see you. When someone is present, they command respect without demanding it. People notice how they carry themselves, how they speak with clarity and thoughtfulness, and how they seem grounded regardless of the situation. This type of presence draws the right people in, those who value depth, honesty, and authenticity. It also naturally distances those who thrive on chaos, drama, or emotional instability. Being present is not about perfection. It is about choosing to show up with your full awareness. It requires learning to quiet internal noise, to step out of constant distraction, and to recognize that your attention is one of your most sacred assets. The world encourages distraction. Presence requires intention. It is an act of reclaiming your focus and honoring the moment you are in. Presence also allows you to recognize your own needs with clarity. When you are scattered, your emotions and thoughts can feel tangled and overwhelming. But when you are grounded in presence, you can identify what you truly feel, what you genuinely want, and what you need to do next. Presence brings internal clarity that external advice cannot provide. Ultimately, presence is a reflection of how deeply you value yourself. When you believe your mind, your energy, and your time are important, you do not waste them. You bring yourself fully to what matters and withdraw from what does not. Presence becomes both a filter and a statement of self-worth. Alignment is choosing what feels true to who you are, rather than choosing what will make others approve of you. Approval seeks external validation. It waits to be liked, accepted, or praised. Alignment listens inward. It considers your values, your growth, and the direction you are moving in. When your decisions come from alignment, they support your long-term evolution rather than momentary acceptance. This creates a life that is stable from the inside, rather than constantly dependent on the reactions of others. Approval is always shifting because it depends on people's opinions, and opinions change. What people approve of today, they may criticize tomorrow. Basing your identity or decisions on approval means your sense of self is never secure. It leaves you constantly adjusting yourself to fit expectations that may not even be consistent. Alignment, however, remains steady. It is rooted in your internal truth and your vision for your life. When you live in alignment, you do not have to chase acceptance because your value is already self-recognized. Seeking approval can create exhaustion. It leads to overperforming, oversharing, or overgiving just to be acknowledged. It can push you to accept roles, relationships, or habits that do not serve your growth simply because they are applauded by others. Alignment frees you from this performance. It allows you to choose relationships that nourish, work that fulfills, and environments that support your peace. Alignment may not always be loud or celebrated at first, but it builds a life that is genuinely connected to who you are. When you choose alignment over approval, you may notice distance forming between you and people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. This distance is not loss, it is clarity. It shows you who valued your presence and who valued your compliance. Approval thrives when you are easy to influence. Alignment thrives when you stand in your truth. As you grow more aligned, your circle may shift, but those who remain are those who respect your authenticity, not your performance. Approval-based decisions often come from fear, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of standing out. Alignment-based decisions come from conviction, a belief that who you are is enough, a willingness to tolerate discomfort in the short term for integrity in the long term. Alignment requires courage because it often asks you to step away from what is familiar and into what is true. Living in alignment clarifies your boundaries. You become more aware of what you can accept and what you cannot. You stop apologizing for needing peace. You stop feeling guilty for choosing environments where you can thrive. You stop allowing external expectations to override internal wisdom. Boundaries formed from alignment are not walls. They are doors that only open to what supports your well-being and growth. Approval takes energy away from you because it puts your sense of worth in someone else's hands. You monitor reactions, adjust behavior, and manage perception. Alignment restores energy because it brings you back to yourself. It allows you to move through life with less internal conflict. You no longer feel the pressure to constantly prove something. You simply live in a way that honors your truth. Choosing alignment also strengthens self-trust. When you make decisions that reflect your values and identity, you teach yourself that your judgment is trustworthy. You become less interested in external validation because your internal validation grows stronger. This trust becomes a foundation that supports you during challenges or transitions. It reminds you that you can rely on yourself to choose what is right, even when it is not the easiest path. Alignment deepens your sense of peace. When your actions reflect your truth, you do not carry the tension that comes from pretending. You do not have to remember who you tried to be for each person. You do not have to manage a persona. You get to live with emotional coherence. Your thoughts, actions, and values move together rather than in conflict. This internal alignment feels stable, grounding, and freeing. A life built on alignment may unfold more gradually than a life built on approval, but it unfolds with intention. It may not always gain immediate applause, but it gains lasting fulfillment. Alignment leads you to people, spaces, and experiences that resonate with your identity rather than demand that you abandon it. It becomes a quiet but powerful guide that shapes how you show up, what you choose, and the direction your life grows. Patience is often misunderstood as stillness or waiting without motion, but in truth, patience is an active practice of trust and restraint. It is the strength to hold your ground when everything around you appears to be moving faster. It is the ability to remain calm when outcomes are uncertain. Patience is not a weakness. It is the discipline of someone who believes deeply in their direction and does not need to rush to prove it. It reflects inner stability rather than external urgency. When someone lacks patience, they may chase what is immediate rather than what is meaningful. They may accept opportunities that come quickly but do not carry value. They may stay in relationships that provide temporary comfort but lack real depth. Impatience leads to decisions rooted in fear of missing out. Patience, instead, keeps a person aligned with what is truly right for them. It allows them to choose with clarity rather than desperation, and clarity always leads to better outcomes. Patience requires emotional maturity. It asks you to tolerate discomfort, uncertainty, and slow development without acting impulsively. This is not easy. It can feel uncomfortable to wait when you want progress, closure, or transformation. But emotional maturity understands that growth often happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible. The seed is growing long before it breaks the soil. Patience honors that invisible work instead of demanding instant results. When you practice patience, you learn to separate timing from worth. You begin to understand that just because something takes time does not mean it is not working. You stop assuming that speed equals success. This shift allows you to become more consistent, more resilient, and more grounded. You learn to trust the rhythm of your life rather than comparing it to others. Patience invites you to stop measuring your journey against someone else's timeline. Patience also helps you develop a stronger relationship with yourself. When you are not pressured by time, you get to know your needs more clearly. You learn what kind of environments help you thrive. You learn which relationships nourish your spirit. You learn what pace supports your mental and emotional well-being. This self-awareness becomes a guide that shapes your decisions and your direction. Patience gives you the space to know yourself deeply. Relationships benefit greatly from patience. Connection takes time to grow, trust takes time to build, and understanding takes time to deepen. When you move quickly in relationships, you often miss the layers that reveal compatibility, values, and emotional alignment. Patience allows relationships to unfold naturally without force or pressure. It prevents attachment to illusions and allows love to grow in truth rather than fantasy. Patience also strengthens resilience. When you learn to wait with intention rather than frustration, you develop the capacity to handle challenges with steadiness. You become less reactive to setbacks. You begin to see obstacles not as signs to quit, but as part of the process of becoming stronger. Resilience grows each time you choose to stay committed instead of giving up. Patience teaches you how to endure, and endurance is one of the foundations of lasting success. There is a kind of quiet confidence in those who are patient. They do not scramble for attention or chase validation. They recognize their value and trust their timing. This calm presence can feel powerful without making a sound. It communicates assurance, depth, and intention. People are drawn to those who move with patience because it shows they are not controlled by pressure or fear. It shows that they are driven by purpose. Patience makes space for clarity. When you are not rushing, you can see situations more clearly. You can evaluate opportunities without pressure. You can listen to your intuition without noise. Clarity rarely arrives in chaos. It comes when the mind is steady. Patience creates this steadiness. It allows space for truth to rise to the surface, for understanding to develop, and for perspective to sharpen. Patience transforms how you experience your own journey. Instead of feeling behind, you begin to feel aligned. Instead of feeling rushed, you begin to feel guided. You stop looking for shortcuts and start valuing the depth of what you are building. Growth that is slow is often growth that lasts. Patience ensures that what you are creating in your life has roots strong enough to endure. Identity is the compass that guides every choice, action, and direction in life. When you know who you are, decision-making becomes clearer, boundaries become stronger, and your path begins to make sense. Without a sense of identity, life can feel chaotic because choices are made based on external pressure rather than internal truth. Identity creates alignment between what you desire and how you move. It becomes the stable foundation that life is built upon. When identity is unclear, it is easy to be influenced by others' expectations. You may take on goals that are not your own, enter relationships that do not support who you are, or pursue achievements that do not fulfill you. You may find yourself constantly shifting, adjusting, or performing to be accepted. This leads to a life that looks full from the outside but feels empty on the inside. Identity provides the clarity to differentiate what is yours from what is simply noise. Knowing your identity allows you to walk into spaces with certainty rather than hesitation. You no longer feel the need to introduce yourself through accomplishment, appearance, or approval. You carry yourself with a quiet assurance because your value is rooted internally. This presence is not loud or boastful. It is steady, calm, and grounded. It communicates that you are not searching for permission to exist. You already know you belong where you choose to stand. Identity shapes your boundaries. When you know what you stand for, you know what you cannot allow. You recognize when something conflicts with your peace, your integrity, or your growth. Boundaries become less about protecting yourself from others and more about honoring yourself. They are not walls meant to isolate. They are guidelines that support emotional and mental well-being. They keep your life clean, intentional, and meaningful. Identity influences relationships. When you are unsure of who you are, relationships can become a place where you lose yourself. You may shift to fit the desires or expectations of others, but when your identity is clear, relationships become a space where you are met, not molded. You attract people who resonate with your values rather than those who depend on your silence, compliance, or shrinking. The connection becomes genuine rather than conditional. Identity strengthens resilience. Challenges no longer break you because your sense of self does not collapse under pressure. You can experience failure, misunderstandings, and setbacks without losing your direction. Your identity reminds you that difficulties are moments, not definitions. Instead of questioning your worth during hard times, you return to who you know yourself to be. This creates emotional stability even when circumstances are unstable. Identity shapes the goals you set. When you are guided by who you are rather than who others want you to be, your ambitions become more meaningful. You pursue what fulfills you rather than what simply impresses others. You move with intention instead of chasing endless achievement. Progress becomes less about speed and more about depth. Success becomes something you define rather than something you try to match. Identity also influences the pace at which you live. You stop rushing because you no longer feel behind. You recognize that your path is unique and cannot be compared to anyone else's. Comparison loses its power because you are no longer trying to follow someone else's story. You are honoring your own. This creates peace where urgency used to live. It allows your journey to unfold naturally rather than forcefully. Identity strengthens intuition. When you know yourself, your instincts become clearer. You can sense when something is right or wrong for you without needing external validation. Intuition becomes a trusted guide, helping you choose environments, relationships, and opportunities that align with your values and growth. This reduces confusion, doubt, and indecision, your inner voice becomes louder than external noise. Identity is not something you find once and keep forever. It evolves as you grow, learn, and experience life. It is a continual unfolding, a deepening understanding of who you are and who you are becoming. The more you honor that evolution, the more fluidly your life moves in the direction that supports your wholeness and your truth.